Hello there, welcome back to the booth here at Pro Tour Dominaria. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe, and this is Simon Gertzen. Well, Rich laid it all out for us there at the news desk. We've got a bit of a race on our hands, though it is very much in Elias Watsfeldt's hands, and he's the one who's out in the lead. So we're going to be watching Andrea Mengucci as he tries to hunt down that draft master slot at the World Championship. But boy, did he run into a hurdle right here in the first round of the draft on day 2. He's going to be playing against the GOAT. That's right, Jon Finkel. Let's head down to the feature match area. It's time for round number 9 here from Pro Tour Dominaria. Hello and welcome back to coverage here at Pro Tour Dominaria. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm in the booth with Simon Gertzen, and we're all set and ready for round number 9, where we have in the feature match area a player that many consider the best of all time in our game, Jon Finkel, coming in with a stellar record of 7-1. He plays for Team Ultimate Guard Pro Team. On the other side of the table, Andrea Mengucci with an equal record, big smile on his face, 7-1. He plays for Connected Company. But Simon, we've got a race here. We have Andrea Mengucci trying to hunt down Elias Watsfeldt. He's going to need a 3-0 and Elias to go 1-2 in this draft if he's going to claim that draft master slot. But it's going to be hard to do. He's got to beat Jon Finkel for starters. And, well, that's just never easy to do, especially in limited. Jon is fantastic at it. We got a chance to watch Andrea Mengucci draft, but for people that weren't watching live, tell us what he's working with.
Yeah, so the big thing about his deck is that he has Karn and Teferi, which is just absolutely ridiculous. His mana base is not the best. He has just had to build a deck with islands, mountains, and plains. No real fixing there.
Okay, well, he does have some nice stuff, doesn't he? Karn, Teferi, and check a look at that. Jeskytron here on turn 3 for Andrea Mengucci.
Yeah, his mana base is 9 blue sources, 6 red sources, and I think only 2 plains. Yeah, for 2 white cards. But he is playing a Navigator's Compass, so he does have that fixing.
He actually played it, huh? I guess you do what you got to do.
And I think Finkel's deck in general is quite well positioned in this matchup because an aggressive wizard strategy should be kind of nice against the planeswalkers, but he's not off to the best start.
Jon's actually going to use Blink of an Eye to save his only threat right now, the Gitu Journey Mage from a Wizard's Lightning. Also, it would have just felt weird to have a Journey Mage die to a Wizard's Lightning. And Mengucci's going to just cycle a Befuddle on end step. He's going to target his own creature with it just to get a card. He doesn't feel like Befuddle's going to do much here. And there it is. Karn hits the battlefield here on turn 4 and against an empty board, no less.
Yeah, that's power play.
To say the least. He's going to plus Karn, get a land off of it, but there's an Academy Drake sitting underneath Karn for next turn.
Journey Mage, I'm correct that I cannot do it to Karn, right?
Each opponent.
Yeah, it does it to opponents, and it has to stipulate that it can do it to Planeswalkers now. The rules have changed. So Andrea Mengucci is going to fall down to 18 life. Thanks to the Journey Mage's Enter the Battlefield trigger and the Arcanist that's on the battlefield next to it that enabled that. Jon just double checking.
What about the equipment that deals 2 damage?
So this is interesting. Mengucci's asking about Sorcerer's Wand.
Sorcerer's something?
Sorcerer's Wand, and he's asking, can that redirect to Planeswalkers? And the answer is yes, it absolutely can. And also of interest, Jon has one and is playing it in his main deck. So we very well may see that here.
Sorcerer's Wand is the name of the card he's thinking of.
Yeah, Jon knows. He just registered it. And that is the type of card that he can use to help manage a Planeswalker's loyalty, at least on some level. Most of the creatures in Jon's deck, it'll be doing 2. But one of the big benefits of Karn is the loyalty. Karn just came down last turn, has 6 loyalty, and is looking to get another one here.
Yep. Mengucci could, for example, just continue to +1 it every single turn, getting a free card out of the deal.
I'll give you the island.
And Mengucci predicts the island as the choice. John agrees. So 2 cards now stuck underneath Karn with those counters on them, but those could be coming back. And look at this, a Journey Mage now for Mengucci. And he says, you know what? I'm just going to bounce the card that you have with the most power. My life total is at 18. I can go down to 16, and since you can't hit Karn, you're really going to have your hands full here, John. And boy, does he ever.
John's hand is not bad with a Journey Mage of his own, with a Fiery Intervention and Icy Manipulator, so lots of removal, a bit of bounce and interaction, but he lost the tempo game very early on to that exchange with Wizard's Lightning and Blink of an Eye. And then Karn coming down on turn 4, of course, was a bit too early for him.
Yeah, it's almost never a good time to see Karn on the other side of the battlefield, but that particular spot with no creatures on board, no mana to interact in any capacity makes it extremely difficult. And what we're seeing now is Jon work his way through how he is going to win this game, because he has to decide now, am I going to start using a bunch of resources to try to get at Karn? Can I go at Mengucci and ignore Karn? Is that even an option? And he has to work through all of this, of course, on the fly, and then try to enact that plan.
And he's most likely going through the cards in his deck while doing so. So,
Right.
for example, what kind of burn spells, what kind of solutions to Karn can I draw into? Do I have another Blink of an Eye? What do I do if I find the Sorcerer's Wand and so on?
Here's Icy Manipulator for Finkel.
Untap.
The other problem here is that Jon's just behind on board. Like, he has a Journey Mage deficit of 1. Now, Jon has decided that he is going to keep Mengucci off of white mana using his Icy Manipulator, and he's going to trade some of his life total to do so.
Not only off of white mana, but also off of 6 mana, so that the turtle couldn't come down. I think Karn protected by a turtle is a big problem.
Unbeatable-ish if he gets the
Unbeatable-ish.
turtle down.
If you don't have a flyer, yes.
Yeah. Jon doesn't look thrilled with the situation, nor should he. Okay, he does have a Fiery Intervention, though, to take care of the Drake. And now he can replay the Journey Mage to drop Mengucci down to 6-thing and tie things up before passing back, but doesn't really make any real progress as far as the Karn situation goes. Mengucci in that enviable position of being significantly ahead at this point.
No blocks.
And he's continuing to pull ahead. He got some free lands off of Karn.
Right.
He's using his mana very effectively here. Even a Weight of Memory backup, so 3 more cards.
A little jealous here, I'm not going to lie. Mengucci uses the second Karn ability to get that and also cast that Cold Water Snapper, so now he's got that safety blanket in effect.
And at the same time, like you mentioned, he is ahead on board. He is winning the race. So, of course, the turtle can protect Karn, can also become aggressive.
Right. And Jon is stuck making plays that he really doesn't want to be doing. He's playing a Journey Mage and just bouncing an Arcanist, but that's just not how he's really going to get ahead here. He just doesn't have a choice. And once again, Karn is going to get plus, and the cards are just flowing now.
Yeah, I'll give you the opt.
He's going to give him the opt. Mengucci keeps predicting. Although he has been right each time.
I mean, the default is that you're getting the weaker cards, and if there's a land in limited, for sure.
Yeah, in this case, it's opt over Blessed Light, but as we've seen, he'll get that next turn if he wants it. Mengucci continues to build out his board with the Rampaging Cyclops and an Arcanist. He even has a Navigator's Compass here.
Yeah, he included that in his deck just to make his mana a bit better.
Yeah, he just highly valued being able to cast Teferi. And now Mengucci's just going to pass the turn back after Jon taps down the Journey Mage before combat. And boy, Jon really needs to find some miracles here. As Mengucci calmly takes a sip of water, he knows he's miles ahead on effectively all metrics here. I don't see how Jon gets out of this one. Is there any way out of this, Simon? I mean, I'm not asking you to come up with some arcane mix of 4 cards that could do it. Is there any realistic way that Jon gets out of this? He's so far behind.
He doesn't have an Arcane Flight, at least not in his main deck. That's something that I was looking at, just to maybe get rid of Karn in 1 or 2 hits. It's probably not going to happen because of the removal that Andrea is holding, but that would at least be a way to pressure Karn. I don't think Karn has been attacked at all this game.
Oh, this is an extreme play here for Finkel. Look at what he's got here. He has Goblin Barrage. He doesn't have a Goblin to sacrifice, so he's going to sacrifice Icy Manipulator.
I think he's getting rid of Karn.
To the Goblin Barrage, but this actually gives him a chance to kill Karn.
And that's some really nice out-of-the-box thinking. Sacrificing Icy Manipulator is not an easy thing to do, but Jon understands that if he wants to have a chance this game, then Karn has to leave the battlefield.
Right, and the problem is that even after that, oh, that was Teferi, by the way, going into hand for Mengucci off of the opt. Oh, no. Are you kidding? And Jon's done. He's going to scoop up his permanents. He already had to do way too much to try to get rid of Karn. And Mengucci says, what, don't you have 2 Planeswalkers?
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
We unfortunately didn't get a close-up of Jon's face there.
Oh, my. We didn't need to. You got it all from his body language as he scoops him up. And that is Andrea Mengucci with the double Planeswalker deck picking up game number 1 against Jon Finkel. We're going to have the conclusion of that match as well as updates from our side tables right after these messages.
When I first encountered Magic, it blew my mind. It just felt like unlike anything I'd ever seen before. I first heard about Magic from a college buddy. I had broken my leg at work in college, found some cards at a bookstore, and played it with my college roommate, and was hooked ever since. The game and the community around Magic are kind of the driving forces to where I even am right now in my life. It's just tremendous.
Welcome back to the feature match area here in Richmond, Virginia. We're here for Pro Tour Dominaria. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm in the booth with Simon Gertzen. And we've got Tim Willoughby down on the floor with some updates on our side matches.
Thank you, Marshall. I hope you're enjoying the red and blue in our feature match area on our main camera, because that's the only places in our feature match area that we're seeing red and blue cards. A lot of green, white, black and black, white on our other tables. Ernest Lin has already taken his first game off Lucas Esperbertu in our Battle of the Undefeateds. He's on green, white, black. A couple of Skittering Surveyors and Shalai Voice of Plenty doing for him in game one. In game two, he already has Khan Sayanaversa in play. A lot of Khans at that draft table, currently one up against Lucas. Then we have Christian Wijaya against Thomas Hendricks. Thomas on green-white, initially looking good with a couple of Baloth Gorges unkicked from Thomas Hendricks, but when Christian was able to kick his and use a little bit of black removal against the green-white deck of Hendricks, he picked up his game one. And finally, we have our back table where it is Elias Watsfeldt against Matthew DiMaggio. DiMaggio on black-green, Elias on black-white, and Elias, he started things great with Arvad the Cursed, Ariel, Knight of Windgrace. He has a lot of power in his black-white deck. On the other side of things, Matthew DiMaggio got a good wide board, though, a lot of removal. That one's still going.
Thanks, Tim. You can see our feature match area there, featuring a good amount of shuffling at the moment, which happens sometimes. It looks like we're underway here on our main table, so let's get back down to it. See if Jon can dodge these planeswalkers and maybe put together an offense against Mengucci, who, boy, he's got quite a deck on his hands here, doesn't he?
Absolutely, and Jon is actually missing blue. He's holding multiple Journey Mages. He has 4 in his deck and a Divination, but no island.
Ooh, we could see Andrea Mengucci just get right by him if he can't find an island soon, and he kind of did, actually. The Shivan Reef ended up making it to Jon.
Divination.
And he's going to try to find more blue mana sources here with his Divination. And look at that, he even found a castable spell.
Yeah,
Boom.
and a
Lava
Wizard.
Runner. Indeed. So not a bad turn there for Jon, all told. If he would have bricked on blue mana, it could have gotten ugly, but things looking pretty good for him at this point. But Mengucci, he's going to be happy to have had this much time to set up his mana, which he's done, by the way. He has a Plains in his hand already, so he can cast all of his spells. Here's Academy Journey Mage, though, for Finkel, trying to get his tempo play going. And Andrea Mengucci is going to respond by casting Wizard's Lightning while he still has that Arcanist on the battlefield, taking out the Journey Mage, and meaning he's only going to take 1 damage this turn.
Mengucci taking the first damage off the game that late is a good sign for him.
Also, I did misspeak. It is Sulphur Falls, not Shivan Reef. Thank you, chat. They always have my back.
Mm-hmm.
Just ever so gently correcting me.
Warlord's Fury.
Warlord's Fury is a card that that Jon has in this deck. I think he might even have a couple of them. Actually, he has 3 of them.
Yeah, that's kind of nice. He does pump his creature here, so he does get in for 2.
That's right.
If he has a bigger board, then he can also just give his creatures first strike, make them more difficult to block.
Now, this is getting kind of interesting here because Finkel has started using his Icy Manipulator as Andrea took an entire turn off there to activate Memorial to Genius to draw some cards, but, you know, it does put him down another land, and Jon was trying to take him off of red, though it didn't work this time as Mengucci had found another mountain. But all he really does here is just replay a Voldalian Arcanist. Not super powerful stuff.
Mengucci has a full hand, though he has more mountains and a plains in hand, so that Icy Manipulator very unlikely to bother him too much. Oh, but look at Mengucci's hand. It's actually a lot of lands.
Yeah, it looks like he's flooding out pretty hard. He does have a pair of removal spells in his hand that he can use to manage the board, but he's going to need to find one of his more powerful options sooner than later. Especially since Jon has the ability to really tempo out his opponent with 4 copies of Academy Journey Mage. in his deck, as well as 3 Gitu Journey Mage. So this is a 1-2 punch that can really drop somebody's life total and keep their board in check. If Mengucci can't find something, he may find himself down game number 2, I should say.
It was a really good draw by him, though. Look at what's going to happen with this 7 mana here.
Yep.
Second copy, or I should say the returned copy of Wizard's Lightning is going to once again help Mengucci keep things under control here, as he ultimately isn't under that much pressure at the moment. Even with all of this, Finkel only has 3 power on the battlefield. But we could see a string of Academy Journey Mages. In fact, I think he's got multiples in his hand.
And he's aggressively
Yes,
tapping
very much
with Icy
so.
Manipulator.
Yeah, he's given up on the plan of trying to keep Mengucci off of any particular color of mana, and he's trying to push through for as much damage as quickly as possible. Now, again, he doesn't actually have a whole lot of power, but it's now up to 6 with just 1 blocker.
And he's holding another Journey Mage. I mentioned earlier that he has 4 copies of Journey Mage in his deck.
That's right.
That can be
Of
pretty...
Academy, and 3 of the Gitu Journey Mage, too.
Yeah,
So
4 Academy Journey Mage.
Yeah.
So if you can just chain those, removing blocker after blocker, it's really frustrating. Goblin Barrage in hand, we saw the kicker being activated. Icy Manipulator, an expensive artifact to sacrifice. But when you can deal 4 to a creature, to a player or planeswalker, that's certainly valuable.
it is the first time I've seen anybody sacrifice Icy Manipulator to Goblin Barrage, but it certainly seemed correct in game 1 when Jon did it. Okay. Gitu Journey Mage and an Arcanist. And he's going to just try to set up the old tap-tap-bounce situation here. Does he have lethal? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Not quite.
He's taking a turn off from
Yeah.
aggressively using the Icy, and that's now he will always be threatening 2 Icy Manipulator activations.
Boy, this tempo game looks really good for Finkel when Andrea draws a whole bunch of lands.
Yeah, it didn't start off too well, actually, for Jon, but he
Yeah.
managed to get there even though we are quite late into the game. And I think Andrea just has nothing of substance here.
Yeah, he drew that volcanic island. And that was kind of right on time for him. And Mengucci's forced to just use removal any chance he can on anything on the other side of the battlefield. He's really recognized that this board state is much more precarious than it looks outwardly. Ooh, there's a good finisher for Jon. We talked about it in game 1. Sorcerer's Wand. He drew that, and particularly in this strategy, it can absolutely finish off an opponent, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Jon win this game via that card.
Yeah, actually now he has 2 non-creature ways to victory: Sorcerer's Wand and Goblin Barrage, and I think Mengucci can definitely not stop both of them.
It's so scary when one of these tempo decks can pile in a bunch of damage, but then also have this very passive way once you've stabilized the board.
Yeah, and it's almost inevitable. So
Right.
even if you're sitting there with your removal spells, you might not be able to stop any of it. We've actually seen a very interesting game where Finkel played a bounce card each turn, and Mengucci just had a removal spell, but the creatures that were still left were putting him in under enough pressure.
Yeah, it looks like Jon has all the tools he's going to need to win this game pretty easily from this position, as Mengucci doesn't really have many ways to gain life, and even cards like his most powerful stuff, the Planeswalkers that he has, are a little slow. You know, they're not going to just pull him out of this situation immediately. They're more incremental advantage type cards.
At this stage, it's really just about Jon deciding what the cleanest way to victory is here. Maybe tapping the island, casting Goblin Barrage, maybe going for an attack, and so on and so forth.
40
Okay.
And that is lethal. thanks to sacrificing once again the icy manipulator. Even easier decision here when it's lethal, but
You got to draw one each game. You don't want to draw 2 and 0.
Yeah. 1 versus 1, I can't beat you. I need
John gave him a little bit of strategic advice. He said you should probably try to draw 1 planeswalker each game rather than 2 in one game and 0 in the other. And Mengucci agreed, so he knows what's up.
He knows what to do for game 3.
He does. All right, looks like we're going to pop in and take a quick look over here at Thomas Hendricks, who's playing against Christian Wijaya. Both of these players are sitting at a cool 7-1.
Yeah.
My goodness, what is going on here? We're not even in the standard portion of our day yet, and we've got another Teferi sitting on the battlefield here in Limited.
2 Teferis, 2 Karns at the same table.
Really?
Yeah, they're all from our featured draft table.
Wow. All right.
Frank Karsten tweeted that the probability of opening both Karn and Teferi is something like 0.04%. Maybe he can run the numbers on 4 planeswalkers in a draft pot.
Wow. All right. This is a supercharged draft pod here on day 2. Didn't look like this yesterday. That is insane.
It's also a supercharged Land of Elves. 5/1 first strike.
Wow. That is no joke.
Not in the business of protecting Teferi, that's for sure.
Yeah, I find that part interesting as well. It looks like a Stronghold Confessor on the bottom part of the library, the battlefield there for Wijaya, means that the Lana Elves wouldn't be able to block anyway.
Yeah.
Hendricks doesn't have much. He has a removal spell, but his Teferi is going down.
Is he going to give up Teferi here?
Vijaya is going to attack Teferi with everything he has, I assume.
Yeah, well, he is putting enough pressure on Christian that if Christian does that, looks like he's out of cards in his or creature cards in his graveyard. He will need a blocker or some way to interact lest he faces death.
That's true. The envoy is actually already exiled, so Fungal Plots doesn't have anything to exile here. Maybe he should have jump blocked already. Difficult.
Yeah, I think he wanted to try to maintain the ability to kill Teferi, but it does put a lot of pressure on your draw step to find some way to at least chump block, at the very least.
And now if Christian attacks, for example, only with a Stronghold Confessor, then Hendricks can exile it. If Christian attacks with everything, then Hendricks will hold back his removal and take care of Christian's blocker.
Ooh, I really want to see how this ends up. Both at Teferi, and this is really the most interesting possible attack, because if Thomas has removal, he really wanted to use it on the Confessor, and now he's going to have to use it on one of these little one-powered creatures.
Yeah, which he doesn't really want to do. So,
and he's going to give up Teferi.
That was I think it was a perfect attack by Vijay. He basically predicted the Blast Light.
Though I must say, he did actually have the follow-up play with that spider.
Yes, but he would have been dead if he attacked with everything.
It's true. Interesting. Now we see Blessed Light hitting Fungal Plots rather than one of the creatures on board.
Nice. Some really high-level plays here by both players.
Yeah, this is just cool. I think that Thomas has recognized that Christian Wijaya is going to have to keep blocking, therefore filling up his graveyard, therefore turning on Fungal Plots, and it's going to take forever for this elf to actually get through. So he's applying as much pressure as possible. And look at this. He's going to go for the double block, and that means trade for a spider. And Hendricks just needs a creature. He needs something. Oh! Wow, how about Krosan Druid with Kicker? Gain 10 life.
And that's threatening to become a 6/3 first striker. What a cool game.
Yeah, this has been a really sweet game. Also, the players on the main table had to use the restroom, so they're going to step away for a minute. So we can stay here anyway. And look at this, Krosan Druid right back at you. Now up to 13 for Christian Wijaya. So this game's getting really interesting. Oh boy, that Teferi in the graveyard.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the price that Thomas had to pay for his game plan. I think he played it absolutely correctly, and then Christian found the correct attack.
Are kicker cards good or
Kicker
bad?
cards are really good.
Now he finds the biggest of them, a 7/7 Baloth Gorger, and that thing could even pick up a pair of Jousting Lances and just start slamming into the red zone, forcing Christian to deal with it going forward.
It's almost unkillable without a Jousting Lance, but
Yeah.
let's see if... I think Christian has 2 more spells in hand as well, so this is not over by any means.
Hendricks feels fine taking the hit from the Confessor here. Oh boy. Shauna Cece's Legacy has shown up now. How big is she right now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5?
5/5.
Okay.
Not bad, but also not...
Not up to the task.
But Christian
Although-
isn't even forced to block here.
No, that's true.
Unless Thomas attacks with both creatures, maybe?
Like if he just wants to send in the 7/7 and then double equip the Croson.
Exactly.
Druid.
He has 9 power in his creatures, so if he makes them 13 power, then he forces at least 1 block out of Christian.
Right.
And then Christian is very unlikely to have a lethal attack. So that way you put the most pressure on
Yeah.
Christian.
The thing that I think Thomas doesn't want to do is trade off that Baloth Gorger for Shauna plus, say, Croson Druid. That would allow
I think that's
Christian
the
a
big question.
favorable
Yeah, that's the big
trade.
the big question. How do you want to...
Well, he must
play
have
this?
drawn something. He did not equip either creature, and he's just going to send in with a 7/7. What could he have drawn? Just a removal spell to say, look, you don't want to double block this one.
It must be a really good reason not to equip either of these lances. Also, it tells something to your opponent, right?
Absolutely. It's,
Look, I had 8 mana and a chance to equip. I'm just attacking with my 7/7.
right, and I'm top decking.
So one line of reasoning here is actually to block with the Sapperling, which is what you would do had Hendrix equipped, just to not give Hendrix the opportunity to use, for example, a removal spell.
Well, let's see what it was. Well, he says okay. Now, 1 creature down means, though, that Shauna is going to drop significantly in toughness and actually die as a result. And look at that. An elephant.
Just a 3/5.
Yeah, you don't see that very often on the battlefield. But he'll take it. It's bigger than everything else that Christian Wijaya has going on.
Yeah, and I think Hendrix got what he wanted from this.
Yeah,
from this
it actually
combat.
looks like a fine trade in retrospect.
You pass? 1-5. You pass, right? Yeah.
Pass the turn back to you.
Combat? Yeah.
Once again, no equip with the other Jousting Lance.
Well, if you draw creatures every single turn,
I guess so. They have to be pretty expensive, though.
I think Thomas is now...
Wijaya down that it was an expensive creature, a primordial worm. Boy, these top decks from Thomas Hendricks have been nice. Putting out just expensive spell. I mean, that's all you really want, right? Anything that costs 5 or more mana, you're probably quite happy with.
That's why Kicker is so great. I love that Christian is keeping on attacking here, trying to at least stay in the race.
That's an Darien Archaeologist there for Wijaya. He's going to get himself a little bit of value.
Ah, nice combination.
Yeah, get the Skitterian Surveyor, replay it, get a counter on the Archaeologist. Still, you have to like Hendrick's position here with these huge creatures plus the Jousting Lances. It's just hard to imagine without hard removal that Christian Wijaya ever really finds a way to get through this. Now, if he does find removal spells, that can turn around quickly, but he clearly doesn't have them at the moment.
And 10? Yes.
10 life at least is not super easy for... Oh my god.
Oh my god, he has Quende. Quende plus Jousting Lance means that these creatures have double strike now, and they all have to be blocked.
That's
They're both lethal.
a sweet deck.
That is insane. Wow. Thomas Hendricks showing us how it's done in the late game.
So now you can let 1 creature through here.
Yeah, you can go to 3 by taking the 7 from the Primordial Worm. But this is not getting better for Wijaya. He needs a miracle here. And he's done. That's going to be Thomas Hendricks winning game number 2 to even things up. But we're back up on our main table between Jon Finkel and Andrea Mengucci. Let's get them rolling and see how we go on game number 3. Things went very well for Mengucci in game number 1. Again, thanks to the double Planeswalker draw. Jon actually found an unconventional line to deal with the first Planeswalker, but immediately the next turn, Andrea played the next one, and Jon had seen enough. What are we going to see out of these players here for game number 3? Reasonable starts for both players. 2-drop into 3-drop from Mengucci.
Finkel is holding Tempest Gen. He started with Island, but didn't draw the third island to just drop the rare on turn 3.
Okay, and there's Goblin Barrage to just kill the Gitu Journey Mage. Andrea Mengucci fully recognizing that cards like the Journey Mage here are what are going to turn on the draws for Finkel, and also responsible for some chip damage, as we call it. Just, I got you for 3 with it once, but that adds up in such a meaningful way in this deck.
He had to use his removal spells on 3/2s anyway all the time. Does he have a land? Does he have a 4th
Karn
land?
Daddy off the top.
I don't think he has it.
Now he's short on mana? Well, he's got another Goblin Barrage to kill the Drake, and Andrea Mengucci very much the aggressor this time.
And that's an island. Tempest Gen is live. 2 Goblin Barrages in the graveyard.
And he used them on much smaller creatures. Let's see if that comes back to haunt Andrea Mengucci, because you know what else Tempest Gen is good at? Pressuring Planeswalkers. And
This
by the way,
might get-
Mengucci could have taken that Gen. He decided not to. Which I
This
think
might
was
get
correct.
ugly, Marshall.
Yes. Oh, here's an opt. This is certainly Mengucci digging for a land. He's found it. That looked like an island.
1 turn too late.
And all he can do is play a second Voldalian Arcanist and pass the turn back. But now Tempest Gen is at the ready. This is going to be a close one, because Mengucci does get to play Karn at some point here. Can he leverage Karn enough to make it count?
But
Still
Jon is
only 3 islands.
Jon is going to start bouncing creatures as well. So, for example, if you bounce the Drake here and Karn comes down, you have actually 2 attackers potentially.
And that's exactly what happens. Academy Journey Mage sends Mengucci's Drake right back to hand. And is Jon Finkel going to be able to find the win here in game number 3 with this tempo strategy from Blue-Red Wizards? Or is Mengucci going to be able to overpower him with cards like Karn, Scion of Urza? This is 2 very different strategies, even though they're actually playing basically the same colors. He's going to go with Karn. Jon just has to decide which land he wants Mengucci to have.
Island.
So you have no total of 8 minutes extra time.
Interesting choice to give Mengucci the island, because that allows him to cast Befuddle, which he showed earlier. Potentially protecting 3 or 4 damage.
Wow, that could have been a very big mistake from Jon.
Or Syncopate. Not relevant here, but still, I was expecting the mountain.
Okay, so one of them goes to the graveyard, one of them back to hand from Mengucci, thanks to Blink of an Eye from Jon. And as you can see, Jon is on the full tempo plan. He is simply trying to keep permanents off the battlefield on Mengucci's side, manage this Planeswalker, and then get Mengucci dead. So what's going to happen here is Mengucci's going to try to leverage Karn as much as possible, make hay while the sun's shining, but Karn will probably end up being dead in a turn or 2. If that's the case, the question is, are the cards that he gained while Karn was around good enough to power him to the victory to stabilize this board?
It looks like it's only going to be the 2 lands that he got, because I fully expect Finkel to have a plan to deal with Karn next turn.
I would assume that if I were Andrea as well.
If there is an island, It's very simple. Tempestion just takes down Karn. If not, you might have to attack with both of your ground creatures, and of course, a hexproof turtle is exactly what you need to protect Karn.
Yeah, now if Jon, even if he had nothing in hand and drew nothing, he still could kill Karn, though it would cost him Academy Journey Mage to do so. Oh, it wasn't. It was a mountain off the top, not an island. That would have made things very simple for Jon.
Yeah, any spell would have been good, and any island would have been good.
Yeah,
Mountain
now
kind of the worst.
he's got Goblin Barrage, another Journey Mage, and a... Yeah, he just has to throw away his Journey Mage to get rid of Karn. It's just how it goes. But his hand still looks good. Again, Icy Manipulator was that last card in hand for him. So the situation we lined up last turn, has Andrea Mengucci generated enough advantage from the time when Karn was on the battlefield to overcome this late part of the game and the good start that Jon Finkel's had? I wouldn't be surprised if he did. I mean, he did draw some extra cards.
I'm just very concerned for Mengucci because he spent 2 of his spells that deal 4 damage.
Oh.
So
He may just not have an answer for Tempest Gen.
maybe the one Blessed Light?
Well, he could do this.
I don't know if he can cast Blessed Light at the moment.
He casts a Academy Drake.
But his creatures are not going to survive. They're going to
You
get
think they're
killed,
just gonna get
tapped,
killed?
or bounced.
Yeah, I think that we're going to see Goblin Bombardment snap off this Academy Drake, and I think Mengucci knows it too. That was a big one. So 3 damage in the air because Jon still has drawn mainly mountains. 4 to 3 is the ratio there.
No, Mengucci needs something else. He needs Arcane Flight on his turtle.
Yeah, another option he has is if he could find his Blessed Light, right?
Yeah.
He does have
He does have the planes in hand, right?
Planes in hand, that's right. Honestly, Teferi wouldn't be the worst either.
Unwind.
Was that Unwind from the sideboard for Finkel? Boy, now he can just protect this lead that he has.
Perfect card at this moment.
Wow, look at Jon Finkel go.
One of my favorite cards in the set, by the way. Just not because of its power level, but because it does answer so many other powerful cards.
And there's an Academy Journey Mage off the top of the library for Finkel, further cementing his lead. Now, on the ground, Mengucci looks fine. He has the Rampaging Cyclops to kind of hold off everything. But boy, this Tempest Gen, even just as the 3/4, has provided a very meaningful clock for Jon, and it's become the real focal point of this game.
Yeah, and he has the answer for the first removal spell, or Teferi.
He needs to keep answering this Academy Drake as well.
But that's the power of Icy Manipulator.
Exactly.
Jon has been playing Icy Manipulator for a very long time.
Yes.
He knows exactly what he's doing here.
That's right.
In combat.
He's going to go ahead and attack.
Oh, we're going for lethal.
That's right. He's going to tap him out of blue mana while we're still in combat, because that means he's drawn another Goblin Barrage. And for the 3rd game in a row, Jon Finkel sacrifices Icy Manipulator to Goblin Barrage. 1 time killing Karn, 2 times killing Andrea Mengucci. And that is it. Jon Finkel wins the match 2 games to 1. We don't call him the greatest of all time for nothing. And he is now 8-1 in the tournament. Looks like we're going to jump back to our back table where we have Elias Watsfeldt sitting across from Matthew DiMaggio. And Tim Willoughby's down on the floor with an update on what happened in game number 2.
Yeah, game 2 was a pretty cool one. Elias Watsfeldt winning by decking. It took a little bit of time, but he was able to get there. He had Arvad the Cursed, Ever a Halcyon Witness, Aiel Knight of Windgrace, and ultimately it was the Thalid Soothsayer and Windgrace Acolyte on the other side of the board, desperately trying to dig for answers. Weren't able to find them, and that was Matthew DiMaggio's demise. But now we have just a little over 6 minutes left on the clock for these two in order to finish their final game here.
Thank you, Tim. Boy, they're going deep. We've got a lot of stuff going on in this pod. Now, this particular match happens to be out of pod. The other 3 matches we're in. But, man, people are going deep and limited this round. I kind of like it.
Yeah, and we are following Elias, of course, because he is currently in the lead for Draft Master. Can lock it up himself. Oh, that's a good way to do that. Some powerful legends.
I did a Grand Prix with Paulo Vitor Damarosa in the booth with me, Simon, and he brought up a concept for us to describe some of the different situations that you see in limited, particularly, though I suppose it does extend to constructed. He called it a mini game. He said some of the cards in this limited set are kind of their own mini game, where they warp the game around themselves and say, "Do you have an answer, or can you deal with me? And if not, I'm going to take over." And Aerial Knight of Windgrace is certainly one of those cards.
Maybe Slimefoot the Stowaway, another example.
Absolutely. And, if you're Andrea Mengucci, either of your Planeswalkers count for that too. But we're going to see now Elias Watsfeldt try to leverage the power of Aerial. And if he can, and Matthew doesn't have an answer, Aerial will absolutely take over this entire board state.
And that's actually where you know what you have to do, but you also know the risks. Because there's always this danger.
It's also worth noting here that with a 2-match lead in the Draft Master, Elias Watsfeldt is in a good position here to basically lock it up.
Mengucci just lost.
Yeah, he lost, so he's done.
So Mengucci is not going to go 3-0, which means that Elias has basically, has improved his chances considerably.
Yeah, he can just lock it up here. So interesting stuff. Elias has really crushed the draft. I mean, he has been ahead of everybody by a lot for a long time.
There was the question whether Dominaria draft would be difficult for him to adapt to, because he was such a master at Ixalan and Rival. So, and they do play very, very differently. But I've known Elias for a while. I think he's just a very well-rounded player. He likes the quirky decks in Constructed, maybe a bit too much. But in Limited, he's rock solid. I think the Swedes in general are very good Limited players.
Look at this. Evra Halcyon Witness is now on the battlefield as well. So
Another mini game.
Yeah, another mini game. And a Saproling Migration, good card. One of my favorites in the set. But boy, it doesn't look good compared to this board state.
DiMaggio is doing powerful stuff. He has a Soothsayer for basically infinite cards. 2 Elfheim Druids. That's 2 more than I usually have. It's really these 2 rares against the pile of synergy on the other side.
So Watsfeldt playing one game here to see if he can secure that slot, maybe see him at the World Championship. Coming into this round, he had 42 total match points in the draft category here. Second place alone was Andrea Mengucci at 36. So Mengucci's going to stay on 36, and at the most he could get 42. With a win here from Watsfeldt, that would put him at 45. And the next person down was at 33 coming in, which means they could go to 36, 39, and then 42. So that would mean Watsfeldt is a match clear no matter what with a win here. Now, he does need to seal it up. I mean, he can seal it up here, but he would also have opportunities too if he were to lose this game. And we finally find an answer for Ariel here.
Yeah,
Looks
this
like
game,
it was a territorial Allosaurus that stomped on it.
This game does not look good for Elias anymore. He had the 2 rares, he has an Icy Manipulator, but what DiMaggio has assembled there is just more powerful in the long run. And also, to be fair, Elias is not thinking about Draft Master right now, because his goal is not to go 1-2 in this draft pod. He wants more out of that, of course.
Of course. And, you know, he still has a respectable record here at the Pro Tour. The 5-3 isn't quite into the rarefied air of some of our other players from our main pod, but boy, that is still in contention for top 8 with a really good run here on day 2.
And this happens quite often. Players making day 2 with 5-3, and they just go 7-0. They draw the last round. They are in our top 8.
It does happen. So it looks like Elias just took the 4 from that Deathbloom Thallid on the chin here and is in a precarious position after having lost Ariel, because he was pretty all in on Ariel there as Matthew had built out a much superior board. And look at what he's got going now. He can draw a bunch of cards. He has bigger creatures. He's got the Allosaurus. He has his Spore Crown Thallid that's pumping up everything except for the Dino and the Elves, but goodness sakes.
Yeah, it seems that Elias's deck is just not very well positioned to fight this fight. Lifelink is really bad against Saprolings getting sacrificed. Jousting Lance doesn't do much because there are so many blockers, and so on and so on.
Feral Abomination is a nice one here for Watsfeldt to basically hold back the whole board of DiMaggio outside of that dinosaur. But Matthew just drew Eviscerate off the top of the library, and he's going to have to make something happen because we're in kind of an interesting position now. Time was just called on the round, Simon. So we're going to be entering into our 5-turn rule shortly. And I don't know, draw doesn't look super hot here, and Matthew DiMaggio may have the ability to push through enough damage. The problem, of course, is that Evra makes racing very difficult.
But if you take out Evra, then there is a 5-5 on the opposing side.
Exactly. So he's actually going to ignore Evra here and go for Eviscerate on the 5-5.
I think what you might be able to do is you attack with your Saprolings, and then if one of them gets blocked by Evra, you sacrifice it. There's a chance that Elias might squeak out a draw here. Eke out a draw here. That would make him Draft Master. Single point.
So if he gets a draw here, he would be at 43 points.
Mengucci can't reach 43.
He cannot. He can only get to 42. So, yes, a draw is good enough for that portion. As you mentioned, Elias is focused on the Pro Tour performance at the moment, but strangely, a lot more riding on a potential draw here than normal.
At 5-3, with the draw, both players also still very live for top 8.
Mm-hmm. And Matthew's going to go ahead and start cashing in some creatures here for his, with his Soothsayer.
Bit surprised about the timing after everything else was done.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have that information before attacking.
Turn back to Watsfeldt, and we are in turn number 1 of 5. And for Watsfeldt, it does look like winning the game isn't on the table for him. He's just got a ground assault that's going to be so difficult to slog through all of those creatures on DiMaggio's side of the battlefield. So Watsfeldt may change gears here if he doesn't see a route to victory and try to play for a draw, playing defensively against Matthew. I think he's going to get it.
2 ices.
Double ices? I feel like he still can't tap down enough to actually get in some type of, 2-turn lethal attacks, but it does feel like that makes him much, much more likely to be able to force a draw here. Wow. Evra really holding down the fort, keeping back all of those 2/2s and smaller creatures. Tap down the Dino. Tap down the other 4-powered creature. Second main phase, so no attack here from Matthew means, well, he's not going to have much more. Turn 3 is going to be on Watsfeldt. Turn 4 back on Matthew, but he has to win the game that turn or we're going to be in a draw scenario.
Maybe he should have killed Evra with
Possible.
His Eviscerate.
So he could just swarm.
Yeah, somehow have a bit more options in that regard. Sylvan Awakening, by the way, in Matthew DiMaggio's hand, so he is preparing for the biggest possible turn 4 of extra turns.
Oh, really? Okay.
Might still not be enough, but it is definitely on his mind here.
Well, they call it the green fireball.
23.
He's going to play a Windgrace Acolyte, which gives him yet another attacker in the air. Ooh, Verdant Force in the graveyard. Boy, can Matthew actually piece something together? He can use his mana elves to pay, which frees up a few more lands to actually start attacking.
But the question is, does he need to leave open 2 mana to sacrifice the creature that
Gets blocked by Evra.
or is that actually, maybe it ends up being the same.
Well, what's probably going to happen here is Watsfeldt is going to take his turn, try to add as much to the board or take away from DiMaggio, and then Matt's going to have to do a lot of math.
I think Elias also has an end of turn fungal infection. That could make a big difference.
It actually
Every blocker counts here.
Definitely. Though it doesn't actually kill anything. He's just being, I suppose, mana efficient here.
Not only mana efficient, but also, of course, he doesn't know that Matthew DiMaggio will tap out next turn. But this is the one chance where Matthew doesn't have mana to sacrifice his creature in response.
Ah, sure. He can actually resolve a fungal infection on not his own creature.
Well, I guess that's the alternative. But
Yeah. Now, it did look like Elias was considering an attack with Evra, switching life totals again while the shields were down for Matthew as far as sacrificing creatures.
But that only gains 4 life effectively, so probably not good enough.
So it wasn't good enough for him. And here we go. This is the big turn for DiMaggio. The only question I really have is there any chance that he loses if he just goes like, animate all my lands, attack with everything, you figure it out? Because if that's the case, then he's really going to have to consider it. But if not, then you just do it.
I don't see him losing, so...
And there we go. Sylvan Awakening. And again, he did cast it off of 2 Elfim Druids. So those lands are now 2/2s with Indestructible. They also happen to have Reach, though. Nothing particularly exciting there. And here we go. He's going to send everything into the red zone. And the question is it going to be enough? Take a look at the blockers on the other side of the battlefield. And Elias kindly reminds him, hey, I have 2 ices here. You don't get to just go into the red zone.
He was getting a bit too excited.
And now it's just math. There's nothing really else to figure out. It's just block all your biggest stuff and make sure I gain the most possible life. And make sure I don't take lethal.
Should Elias have tapped the flyer? Because it has 3 power? No, maybe
it's
it doesn't
3
make a
guaranteed
difference.
because you could have blocked the 4-powered flyer on the bottom. How much is it? 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? 11, 12, 13, 14. It's actually 16, which is exactly lethal?
If it's 16, Watsfeldt has invoked the Divine in hand.
Oh.
Is that how he stays alive?
He just invokes one of his own icy manipulators, and that would leave him at 4, and that means that we get the ever-rare, exciting draw here. This is a big one for Elias Watsfeldt, and while it isn't necessarily the conclusion that he wanted coming in, it does mean that he just locked up his seat at the World Championship.
Yeah, and you have to find that line to draw this game.
Yeah, he actually was dead, right? It was 16. He was going to gain 4, go to 16, and be at 0. So he needed to have one more blocker. Boy, you know, you talked about the fungal infection there down the stretch, and every single blocker counting on that last attack step. So good stuff from Elias, and congratulations to him for securing Draft Master. And we're going to be bringing you, of course, coverage of draft, and we'll be moving on to standard a little bit later in the afternoon. For now, short commercial break. Don't go anywhere.
Looking for a place to hang out and play Magic? Head to your local game store this and every Friday to play Friday Night Magic events. Get more info at magic.wizards.com/FNM.
Well, that was quite the limited round, wasn't it, to be fair? And the thing is, this is a fantastic draft format. It's super deep, super wide. You can just go anywhere you want, any color pair. And it's not even just a color pair, because once you've chosen that you're going to be black and green, there's still many directions you can go. It's time for another deep draft dive now as we head into the world of what happens when you open and take Lich's Mastery.